The moment she arrived on the red carpet, she was dismissed. Her outfit consisted of a simple linen dress, strappy flat sandals, and loose, unstyled hair. She carried a stack of black and white papers in her hand, without a binder or any visible branding. A businesswoman subtly adjusted her Cartier necklace, offered a brief look, and remarked, "Since when do charity galas welcome the locals?" A fashion model turned to her companions and stifled a laugh. She appears to have stepped out of a public library, not a billionaire ball. Rose Avery stood quietly at the VIP check-in. No one inquired about her name. No one examined the invitation she held. To them, she possessed no worth, merely a fleeting amusement in a glittering room, a woman too quiet, too plain, to be taken seriously. However, they were mistaken. The woman they had just humiliated was the actual owner of the entire gala, and the one who held absolute power over the very ecosystem they depended on. The Avery Global Gala stood as the event of the year, taking place in Washington, D.C. At the luxurious Meridian House, a mansion known for its chandeliers and rich history. More than a fundraiser, it represented a strategic competition where prominent figures, senators, CEOs, celebrities, and media moguls, contended for influence. The guest list was carefully selected, with only 200 invitations extended, each serving as a coveted entry into the upper echelons of American wealth and politics. A palpable excitement filled the atmosphere as attendees awaited news of the largest grants, the most esteemed collaborations, or a favorable review from the Avery Foundation, the powerful entity that dictated funding for areas ranging from education to defense contracts. Rose Avery moved through the gathering discreetly, her canvas backpack resting on her shoulder, her proposal for a complimentary community library held securely beneath it. Months were spent developing the plan, filled with a deep commitment to literacy and empowerment for children in underserved neighborhoods. The soft ivory, second-hand linen dress with its square neck moved gently as she walked. Her sandals made a quiet clicking sound on the marble floor. She chose not to wear makeup, it wasn't necessary. Her face was remarkable in its simplicity, with pronounced cheekbones and eyes that reflected a quiet determination. However, to the gala's guests, she was unnoticed or even a target. The lobby presented a scene of elaborate couture gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos, with diamonds catching the light. A tech billionaire, sporting a velvet blazer, expressed disdain as Rose walked by, asking, "What's she doing here? Distributing flyers for a bake sale?" A congresswoman's aide, enjoying a glass of champagne, whispered to her superior, "Have they begun inviting anyone who walks in off the sidewalk?" She appears as though she instructs yoga at a local community center. A wave of laughter echoed among their group, precise and critical. Rose remained unfazed. She continued walking, her gaze fixed ahead and her pace even, as though the voices around her were merely ambient sound. Approaching the VIP check-in, an employee wearing a tailored black suit gave her a cursory look. "Name?" he inquired, his voice precise, seemingly certain she wasn't authorized. Rose presented her invitation, a simple card featuring a single, raised A. However, before she could respond, a woman adorned in a sequined gown pushed past her. "Pardon me, I am on the guest registry," the woman stated, displaying a wrist covered in diamonds. A staffer allowed her entry, disregarding Rose completely. "Ma'am," he said, addressing her, "this area is reserved for priority guests. Please try the general seating in the back." Rose acknowledged this, remaining calm, and moved aside. She offered no objections, spoke no protests. She simply stood there, holding her papers, her face calm but resolute. It was then that a young man wearing a well-cut navy suit, Evan Caldwell, the senator's son who has 1 million followers on social media, noticed her. He retrieved his phone, a smirk playing on his lips, and began recording. "Hey, watch this," he said to his live stream, adjusting the camera to focus on Rose. "This woman believes she's attending the Avery Gala wearing a second-hand dress and carrying a pile of printer paper. Seriously, are you planning to present a free library proposal to billionaires? Best of luck, dear." His viewers immediately filled the chat with laughing emojis and mocking remarks. "She's certainly brave," Evan said with a laugh, zooming in on her sandals. "But this is an entirely different level of unrealistic. The audience reacted strongly, their laughter escalating in volume and intensity. A reality TV star, wearing a red dress with a low neckline, joined in the mocking, tossing her hair. "Honey, this isn't a PDA meeting. Go home and change," she said. A hedge fund manager, his cufflinks catching the light, added, "She's probably here to request funding. She should have at least chosen a more appropriate outfit." Rose remained motionless, her eyes following the detailed ceiling trim as if committing it to memory. She offered no reply, avoiding their stares. Her silence wasn't a sign of vulnerability, it was a barrier, unwavering and composed. While Rose waited near the VIP check-in, a cluster of young heiresses in dazzling gowns gathered around her, observing her like predators. One, holding a Chanel purse, glanced at Rose's cloth backpack and scoffed, "Is that her bag? I wouldn't use it to carry my dog's toys." Another approached, her voice laced with malice, "Sweetie, this is the Avery Gala, not a soup kitchen. Why don't you spare us all the discomfort and leave?" Laughter rippled through the room, the sounds bouncing off the marble walls and attracting attention. A photographer positioned nearby quickly captured an image, remarking to his colleague, "This'll go viral. Homeless hippie crashes elite gala." Rose's fingers curled more tightly around her invitation, though she remained silent. Her expression stayed composed, almost otherworldly, as if the comments were water flowing over glass. Despite this, each remark stung, and the visible enjoyment others took in her discomfort felt overwhelming. Within the ballroom, a palpable excitement filled the air. Tables were adorned with crystal stemware, and each centerpiece was a lavish display of orchids and gold leaf. The stage was prominently positioned at the front, enveloped by velvet curtains, where the evening's significant announcement was to be made, the reveal of the gala's primary sponsor, responsible for covering the expenses of the entire event. Many people believed it would be Nathaniel Avery, the solitary billionaire whose corporation Avery Global functioned as an unofficial power, influencing national spending and cultural trends. His lack of public appearances in recent years had only intensified speculation, but tonight, the expectation was that he would appear. Rose secured a seat at the perimeter of the room, close to a utility entrance where servers moved between areas. She placed her papers on the table, carefully smoothing them, and retrieved a small notebook from her backpack to write down some thoughts. The woman beside her, a media heiress wearing a sapphire-encrusted gown, looked over and expressed disbelief. "Are you really writing in a spiral notebook? At the Avery Gala?" Her friend, a pop star with a platinum blonde bob, moved closer. "Perhaps she's recording her feelings about feeling so different." They laughed, not attempting to speak quietly. Rose continued writing, her pen moving smoothly, her face showing intense concentration. The gala began with a string quartet, their music flowing amidst the conversations. The host, a silver-haired TV anchor with a voice like velvet, stepped onto the stage to greet the audience. "Tonight, we celebrate not just philanthropy, but power," he announced, his smile radiant. "The Avery Foundation has influenced our nation's future, education, infrastructure, and policy, and we're here to see who will carry that legacy on." A palpable anticipation filled the room, with many heads turning, trying to locate Nathaniel Avery. Was he observing from a private box at the back? The atmosphere was charged. Throughout the evening, the taunting of Rose continued relentlessly. A cluster of young influencers, positioned near the bar, repeatedly photographed her from a distance, adding captions like "Haha Gala Crasher" and "Who let her in?" Evan Caldwell, continuing his live stream, provided commentary on her every action. She was simply reviewing her documents as if she intended to revolutionize everything. A reminder, you won't receive any funding appearing like that. His online discussion was filled with approving reactions to his humor, encouraging him to continue. A senator's wife, listening nearby, turned to her husband. "It's quite embarrassing, actually. They should increase security measures. People like her diminish the significance of the event." Rose, in the meantime, was listening to the speeches. A technology leader announced a commitment of $5 million for AI research. A congressman pledged $3 million for veterans programs. Each announcement received applause, but Rose's eyes remained focused on her notebook. where she documented observations about literacy gaps in rural schools. When a waiter offered her a glass of champagne, she smiled and requested water instead. Plant-based diet, huh? The waiter remarked, half joking. You're likely the only one here who doesn't eat caviar. Rose chuckled quietly, a first indication of relaxation. Caviar's overrated, she commented, and returned to her notes. Amidst a pause in the speeches, a well-known lobbyist moved toward Rose's table, his expression difficult to miss. He took her library proposal, examining it as if it were a simple sketch. Free libraries? For those children, he stated, his voice audible to those at adjacent tables. Darling, you're misusing everyone's time. Focus on teaching yoga or your current profession. He returned the papers, one page drifting to the floor. As Rose bent to retrieve it, a passing socialite inadvertently crushed it, her stiletto leaving a mark. She chuckled without turning around. The room filled with suppressed laughter, eyes turning to observe Rose's discomfort. She picked up the page, carefully smoothing it, and returned to her seat, her expression composed. However, the atmosphere surrounding her felt oppressive, thick with the audience's amusement at her misfortune. The room's unkindness escalated when Evan and his friends came to her table. The camera continued to record, his smile expansive. Hey, library lady, he called out, his voice intended to attract attention. What's your proposal? Free books for kids? That's charming, but this is a different level. You aren't securing a meeting with Nathaniel Avery appearing as if you just emerged from a commune. His companions chuckled, and several adjacent tables echoed the amusement, their laughter rising like a surge. Rose lifted her gaze, her eyes locking with Evan's for the first time. They were bright, unwavering, almost intense. She remained silent, maintaining eye contact until he visibly hesitated, a nervous chuckle escaping him as he addressed his camera. Tough crowd. Huh? He mumbled, stepping back. The gala proceeded towards its peak. The host reappeared on stage, his demeanor serious, yet vibrant. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the moment you've all anticipated. The Avery Foundation has consistently been a source of influence, and tonight we announce not only the sponsor of this gala, but the new steward of Avery Global itself, the individual who now oversees its extensive resources, its funding channels, and its vision for America's future. The room fell silent, forks clinking against plates forgotten. Everyone leaned forward, anticipating Nathaniel Avery's imposing figure to appear. Instead, the host extended his arm toward the back of the room. Please welcome the new owner of Avery Global, the woman now responsible for all political, educational, and media funding pipelines, Ms. Rose Avery. A noticeable reaction went through the crowd, with many people turning to look for a prominent figure in a private area. However, Rose rose to her feet, her linen dress reflecting the light, her sandals making almost no sound on the floor. She approached the stage, still holding her papers, and her hair remained unbound. The room was still, with all eyes focused on her, and many people were visibly surprised. Evan's phone shifted a little, his live stream showing his shocked expression. The businesswoman wearing the Cartier necklace sputtered, coughing on her wine. The model who had previously made fun of her appearance, referencing a library look, became motionless, her hand shaking as she held her clutch. Rose entered the spotlight, appearing exactly as she always did. There was no elaborate gown, no sparkling jewels, just Rose. She placed her documents on the podium and surveyed the audience, her eyes pausing on the first row, on Evan, the influencers, and the senator's wife. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but carried a weight that filled the room. Tonight is not simply about raising money, it is about determining who truly deserves funding. She paused, allowing the words to resonate, because I am capable of writing a $10 million check, or I can erase your name from this entire ecosystem permanently. As Rose approached the podium, the spotlight illuminated the faint creases in her linen dress, a stark contrast to the room's opulence. She placed her papers on the table, and for a brief instant the audience paused, anticipating a misstep. However, she began to speak, her voice firm, cutting through the quiet. I am Nathaniel Avery's daughter. For 7 years I have lived among you, unnoticed, to comprehend the world my father's empire influences. Every dollar you have pursued, every agreement you have finalized, every aspiration you have financed, it has been under my observation. The room reacted, faces losing color as the reality became apparent. Evan's phone vibrated in his hand, his live stream now displaying his own collapse. The businesswoman's Cartier necklace sparkled as she held it, her empire suddenly vulnerable. Rose stood firm, her unassuming nature now a symbol of authority, her silent strength unmistakable. The stillness was absolute. Evan's live stream chat filled with question marks and surprised emojis, his viewers struggling to understand what they just witnessed. The senator's wife squeezed her husband's arm, her face drained of color. The media heiress dropped her fork, the clatter reverberating in the quiet. The crowd's astonishment intensified as Rose's words lingered. She raised her head, her eyes meeting the senator's wife who had previously labeled her a detriment to the event. "You believed I was insignificant," she stated, her voice calm yet sharp, "but I'm the one who has been endorsing your grants, validating your initiatives, observing each action you've taken. My father established Avery Global, but I am the one who has been managing it, discreetly until this moment." The room felt smaller, her presence dominating every space. The pop star's platinum bob shook as she understood her latest tour was funded by Rose's endorsement. The tech mogul's wife, who had previously belittled her as someone of lesser status, settled back into her chair, her expression showing fear. Rose's unassuming nature was no longer a source of amusement, it demonstrated her power and influence. Rose remained calm, avoiding any display of triumph, and proceeded with, 7 years ago, my father, Nathaniel Avery, presented me with a choice. To truly understand what the world requires, I've lived among you unnoticed and ordinary. I've taught children to read in crumbling schools. I've eaten meals that cost less than your coffee. I've listened to people you'd never notice, and I've built something substantial. She presented her papers, the library proposal. This is the Quiet Power Initiative, a network of free libraries across America, starting with the kids who need them most. I'm funding it myself, $50 million to start, no grants needed. A hush lingered in the air, some murmuring, others frozen in disbelief. Rose's gaze repeatedly scanned the room, unwavering and determined. However, let me state this plainly. This environment, your initiatives, your endeavors, your reputations are reliant on Avery Global. And I determine who remains within it. Those who create, who contribute, who demonstrate foresight, they will prosper. Those who undermine, who deride, who perceive authority as a trivial pursuit. She stopped, her look directed at Evan, then the influencers, then the businesswoman. Your involvement is terminated. The impact of her words felt devastating. Evan's phone continued recording, though his hand trembled. His scholarship from the Avery Foundation, his White House internship, his entire future seemed to vanish before him. The influencers who had photographed her quickly tried to remove their posts, their faces pale. The senator's wife spoke urgently to her husband, who was already calling his chief of staff, attempting to save their funding. Rose did not pause to observe them. Turning back to the audience, her voice lowered, yet remained authoritative. The Quiet Power Initiative goes beyond books. It's about providing individuals with opportunities to advance, to gain recognition, and to be listened to. I have witnessed the impact of investing in those who are often disregarded. And I am here to ensure that continues, beginning tonight. She descended from the stage, her sandals making a gentle sound, and returned to her place. The chamber filled with a combination of surprised applause and anxious whispers. The host, regaining composure, attempted to introduce the following speaker, but the audience was distracted. Everyone's attention was focused on Rose, who remained seated, calmly reviewing her notebook as if the events hadn't occurred. By morning, the consequences arrived quickly and severely. Evan Caldwell's Avery Foundation scholarship was withdrawn, and his internship was terminated via a brief email from the White House. His live stream, intended as a ridicule of Rose, unexpectedly gained widespread attention for negative reasons, and his name is now linked to arrogance and downfall. Those influencers who had shared her photos were barred from Avery-funded events, and their brand partnerships ended abruptly. The businesswoman, adorned with a Cartier necklace, discovered her company's $20 million education grant had been withdrawn and rerouted to Rose's library program. The senator's wife and her husband encountered a harsh truth. Their favored initiatives, ranging from think tanks to campaign funds, were discontinued, diminishing their impact within a few hours. By morning, the lives of the elite were falling apart. The reality television personality who had instructed Rose to depart received an email. Her Avery-sponsored docuseries, Her Pathway to Credibility, was cancelled, and her name was removed from the foundation's list. She looked at her phone, her red dress from the gala discarded on the floor, her career seemingly ruined. The hedge fund manager, who had mocked her attire, discovered his firm's $15 million defense contract had been given to a rival company, a brief message from Avery Global mentioning ethical incompatibility. The cufflinks felt like restraints now, his arrogance a tightening grip. Social media was filled with screenshots of their mockery, now accompanied by captions referencing their downfall, a clear case of karma. Viewers watching Evan's archived livestream celebrated as his confident expression transformed into a representation of his self-destruction, his future seemingly undone by the woman he'd previously dismissed as delusional. Rose, in the meantime, had already begun her work. She convened with community leaders in a small D.C. office, her cloth backpack resting on the floor, her proposal now serving as a detailed plan. The Quiet Power Initiative opened its first library in a neglected neighborhood, with plans for 50 more by year's end. She didn't gloat, didn't seek the spotlight, she just worked, her quiet power reshaping the world one step at a time. The influencers who'd tagged Rose with Galacrasher were now absent from the elite circle. Their invitations to Avery-backed events, fashion weeks, charity balls, and premieres vanished, and their follower counts plummeted as brands distanced themselves. A tearful apology video was released, but the damage was already done. Rose's team had initiated the process for excluding her from future funding. The photographer who captured Rose's viral humiliation had his press credentials revoked and was dropped by his agency. His moment of notoriety became his downfall. Across the internet, the public celebrated what they perceived as justice. Memes featuring Rose's serene face with the caption, "Never judge the quiet ones," proliferated on all platforms. Those who had previously mocked her sandals now confronted a changed situation. Rose Avery didn't just win, she redefined the landscape, leaving the established order behind. The gala's elite had dismissed her sandals, her proposals, her aspirations. They perceived her as insignificant. But Rose Avery was far from insignificant. She embodied the future, and she had just reshaped theirs. This is the impact of the overlooked. If this narrative resonated with you, like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. They requested she tackle a complex math problem, not for the solution itself, but to observe her discomfort, hesitation, and silence. Within a seminar room populated by tailored suits and PhD name tags, she arrived wearing worn canvas shoes and a creased shirt. "Did you take a wrong turn, ma'am?" Someone chuckled, "This isn't the PDA meeting." However, as her hand grasped the marker and countless eyes anticipated her failure, the whiteboard began to reveal something entirely different. The Ascension Forum at St. Lennox University stood as a cathedral of intellect, its ancient brick walls draped in ivy, its seminar halls aglow with chandeliers worth more than Manhattan penthouses. This exclusive conference, reserved for Ivy League PhDs and million-dollar AI research sponsors, featured tailored wool suits, silk ties, and name tags boasting titles like Chair of Quantum Computing. Polished oak tables held crystal water pitchers, and the air carried notes of oud and ambition. A limited number, just 300 attendees, received invitations, and their sapphire badges were verified by staff wearing velvet vests. Outside the main hall, a marble atrium provided access to a private lecture theater, with its doors designated solely for keynote speakers. Lillian Moore Bellamy entered through a less conspicuous entrance. Her jeans were worn, her simple t-shirt was tucked into a cardigan featuring worn cuffs, and her chestnut hair was pulled back with a rubber band. At 31, raised in a modest town in Vermont, she had taught herself advanced mathematics while caring for her ailing mother, and had turned down PhD offers from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton. She held a thick notebook filled with handwritten formulas. It was her only companion besides her husband, Dr. Henry Bellamy, the forum's keynote speaker. The hall's stairs felt oppressive, their whispers a gathering storm. Lillian seemed out of place within the forum, her notebook a stark contrast to the elite's carefully constructed environment. A Yale professor, wearing a $4,000 Zegna suit and displaying a sapphire badge, halted his discussion. He questioned aloud, loud enough for others to hear, if she was his bag holder. A Stanford researcher, dressed in a $3,000 Armani blazer, laughed softly, nodding to his colleague, suggesting she might be his new girlfriend, someone who hadn't attended college. A wave of laughter echoed through the seminar room, with attendees attempting to hide smiles behind their hands. Lillian remained composed, her hazel eyes focused, a notebook held close. She had come to offer encouragement to Henry, whose work she had subtly influenced. The audience's frustration grew, feeling the sharp sting of these academic authorities' dismissive behavior and their contempt for Lillian's calm demeanor. The ridicule intensified, a harsh and pointed performance led by the forum's prominent members. Becca Sloan, a third-year PhD candidate from St. Lennox, moved forward, her tailored Chanel skirt swaying, her blonde ponytail as crisp as her expression. At 26, having grown up in Boston's elite circles, she was known for her dismissive attitude towards competitors. She looked at Lillian's worn cardigan and showed disapproval. "Ma'am, this area is designated for main speakers only. Free coffee is available downstairs," she stated, her voice precise. The attendees reacted with laughter, the sound reverberating through the oak walls. Becca swung her ponytail, releasing a wave of jasmine-scented perfume, a fragrance Lillian was aware Henry found unpleasant. Lillian's grip on her notebook intensified, her expression composed, yet the audience's anger escalated, their pulses racing at this direct challenge, Becca's confidence appearing like a flame in the cold air. The disapproval intensified, a planned and focused criticism of Lillian's participation. A conference staff member, Margaret Voss, moved forward, her tailored vest neat, her face showing years of upholding established rules. At 50, raised in upstate New York, she took pride in maintaining order. She indicated the exit, her voice steady but not unkind. "Let's go, miss. You're disrupting the session." The crowd responded with cheers, their silk ties gleaming as they gestured toward the atrium. A Princeton alum, dressed in a $5,000 Brioni suit, called out, "Did you get lost? This isn't the community college." Laughter erupted, academics subtly bumping shoulders. A postdoc whispered, "She doesn't even look like a grad student." Someone added, "That notebook's probably just doodles and she dares sit here?" The insults felt like a guillotine, each word a blow against Lillian's silence. The audience's anger grew, their hearts aching for Lillian, and their frustration directed at this group's harsh treatment. The academics' disapproval became sharp as Lillian stood in the seminar room, their derision a deliberate attack intended to diminish her resolve. Near the oak tables, a group of Ivy League professors, dressed in $7,000 Seville Row suits, assembled, their voices forming a harsh blend. "She's a detriment to this forum's reputation," one remarked, gesturing with a gold fountain pen towards Lillian's worn cardigan. "Return to the library, dear," another suggested, displaying a sapphire badge and adding, "Her notebook appears as if purchased at a secondary school sale." Amusement rippled through the gathering, with staff members subtly acknowledging each other, their cufflinks sparkling. A quantum computing expert exclaimed, "She's an insult to every paper presented here." The remarks felt like a guillotine, each word a blade against Lillian's poised silence. Henry's lecture theater loomed beyond the hall, but the seminar room's disdain was a crushing weight. The audience's frustration grew, their hearts pounding, angered by this orchestrated cruelty, their ire ignited, ready to challenge the elite's arrogance. Becca Sloan delivered another sharp comment, deliberately intended to unsettle Lillian in front of the select group. "So, what understanding do you expect to gain at a forum like this?" she asked, her Chanel skirt reflecting the light as she stood at Lillian's table. "Or should we administer a freshman entrance exam to familiarize you with the subject?" She didn't pause for a response, instead heading to the whiteboard where she began writing a complex combinatorics problem, one that had previously challenged her own research group. "If I solve this before the coffee break ends, I'll publicly apologize and get your coffee for a week," she stated, her voice loud enough to silence nearby murmurs. If not, kindly step aside and make room for real academics. The attendees cheered, their scorn a suffocating tide, their whispers buzzing. She's a fraud. Lillian's hazel eyes burned with quiet fire, but her smile held a shield against the challenge. The audience's anger surged, their hearts aching for Lillian, outraged by this public humiliation displayed before them. The elite's contempt became intensely personal, their voices a sharp and bitter chorus. A Harvard professor, dressed in a $6,000 khitan suit, rested against the seminar table, his voice harsh and dismissive. She's insignificant, likely here to collect Bellamy's notes, he remarked, indicating Lillian's notebook. Notice that cardigan. Did she make it herself? His colleagues chuckled, their sapphire badges glinting. An MIT postdoc exclaimed, she's an embarrassment to whoever let her in. The crowd's laughter felt overwhelming, their arrogance felt like a public condemnation. Lillian tightened her rubber band, her hazel eyes steady, but the seminar room's disapproval felt like a heavy burden. The audience's frustration intensified, their hearts racing at this perceived institutional failing, their anger threatening to disrupt the forum's decorum. Becca Sloan's disapproval intensified, her words a deliberate attempt to embarrass Lillian before the seminar room's distinguished attendees. She's not just out of place, she's a disgrace, she stated, her Chanel skirt catching the light as she indicated Lillian's canvas shoes. Henry must be horrified to see this. Nobody in his session. Her group responded with laughter, their silk scarves waving, their eyes briefly looking at Lillian's notebook. She's a charity case, not a scholar, Becca remarked, her voice strong enough to stop nearby whispers. The attendees responded with cheers, their scorn a heavy atmosphere, their comments a constant hum. She's a fake. Lillian's hazel eyes held a quiet intensity, but her smile remained, a defense against the disloyalty. The lecture theater shone in the distance, yet the seminar room's disapproval felt overwhelming. The audience's anger surged, their feelings sympathetic toward Lillian. The room was filled with anger as this PhD candidate's actions were revealed. The staff's involvement only intensified the disappointment, appearing as a further breach of trust. A session coordinator, Clara Holt, wearing a tailored blazer, addressed the situation, her tone laced with disdain. Miss, general seating is located in the atrium, she stated, gesturing towards a side door, her slight smile echoed by nearby academics. We do not allow guests of this nature in the main hall, she continued, prompting laughter from the assembled group. At 28, having grown up in Connecticut, Clara valued her role in controlling access. The crowd's endorsement felt like an overwhelming force, their condescension a very public shaming. Lillian held her notebook, her hazel eyes focused, but the seminar room's disapproval felt oppressive. The audience's anger rose, their hearts racing at this form of institutional rejection, their resentment burning against St. Lennox's reputation. The seminar room staff's disapproval became obvious, their actions a public embarrassment seemingly intended for the academics' entertainment. A senior usher, Richard Tate, confronted Lillian close to the oak tables. His velvet vest was immaculate, and his voice conveyed condescension. Miss, this hall is reserved for registered attendees only, he stated, ensuring the surrounding audience could hear. He indicated her jeans with a gesture, and a smirk echoed across nearby staff. The Ascension Forum doesn't usually permit such simplicity, he noted, which prompted laughter from the academics and coordinators. The audience's affirmation felt overwhelming, their perceived superiority a stark display. Lillian held her notebook, her hazel eyes steady, but the seminar room's disapproval felt heavy. The audience's anger surged, their hearts racing at this perceived institutional slight, their indignation intense against the forum's principles. The intensity of the criticism escalated, their words a sharp and bitter barrage. A Cornell researcher, dressed in a $4,000 Canali suit, leaned forward, his voice raised and critical. She's a fraud, likely attempting to spy on Bellamy's work, he said, his colleagues agreeing with nods, their cufflinks gleaming. Her notebook is a mere prop, a deceptive tactic to appear inconspicuous. Another added, raising his voice, she's a deceiver, and the forum has been misled. Derisive laughter echoed, each accusation a painful blow aimed at Lillian. Rumors circulated, with accusations spreading quickly. It was said she was trying to take his research. Lillian subtly twisted a rubber band, maintaining her composure, but the public's defamation felt heavy. The audience's frustration boiled over, many sympathizing with Lillian, their anger a powerful force against these false accusations, eager for the truth to expose the elite's deceit. Lillian remained silent, her eyes dry, her arms holding the notebook, the record of her life's work, a collection of formulas that had influenced Henry's career. She moved to the whiteboard, her canvas shoes quiet on the oak floor, and took the marker. The room was still, many eyes watching to see if she would hesitate. Her lines were steady, purposeful, without tremor, no deletions, and no adjustments. Within 3 minutes, the board displayed a complex solution, a level 2 supersymmetric permutation model rendered in graceful lines. She placed the marker and returned to her seat, her hazel eyes unwavering. Becca scoffed. "That's it? Are you certain you didn't make a mistake?" The audience's emotions shifted, their frustration turning to excitement, Lillian's calm resolve a focal point. An experienced professor, Dr. Arthur Wren, stood up from the front row, his tweed jacket showing signs of age but retaining its dignified appearance. At 70, a legend in combinatorics, he moved slowly toward the board, his glasses glinting, his expression changing from composed to stunned. This is the shortest known solution to this problem," he said, his voice trembling. "She employed a supersymmetric model, something the advisory board hasn't even fully proven yet." The room fell silent, crystal pictures wavering, gasps spreading through the perfumed air. Attendees rose, gathering around the board, their sapphire badges glinting. Who is she? Questions arose about her identity. What was her origin? Becca's Chanel skirt appeared to fade, her ponytail offering no defense against the reality. The audience's sense of accomplishment grew, their hearts pounding as Lillian's skill altered the seminar room's power dynamic. The atmosphere changed as the keynote session commenced, with the crowd assembling in the lecture theater. Henry Bellamy approached the stage, his gray suit well-made but not ostentatious, his arrival impactful. At 40, raised in Chicago, he had received the Fields Medal for his work on algorithmic symmetry, much of it built on Lillian's unseen contributions. He adjusted the microphone, his gray eyes meeting Lillian's in the front row. "I'd like to relinquish my speaking time to someone far more deserving," he said, his voice steady. "This is Lillian Moore Bellamy, who turned down 3 PhD offers from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton to care for her ailing mother. The individual who authored 80% of the core algorithms in my research, and the only person in this room who genuinely understands the genesis of this problem." The audience's spirits lifted, their anger shifting to admiration, as Henry's explanation clarified the deception that had restricted Lillian. The room fell silent. Becca Sloane's coffee cup slipped from her grasp, breaking on the oak floor. Henry spoke, his voice sharp in the quiet, stating, "She doesn't require formal recognition. She doesn't need awards. She possesses brilliance, a quality none of us present can assert." The attendees' cufflinks appeared to lose their luster, their expressions strained with surprise. Clara Holt remained still, her role as gatekeeper a clear admission of defeat. Henry indicated Lillian, his hand unwavering. "This forum extended an invitation to me, but it is her contributions that warrant your appreciation." The audience cheered, their fury transformed into pride as Lillian's truth began to reshape the forum's legacy. Dr. Wren nodded, his glasses glinting with respect, the room holding its breath awaiting her response. Lillian rose, her frayed cardigan a quiet crown, and took the microphone. "I didn't come to prove anything," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I came to support my husband." She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping the room, adding, "But since you asked for a solution, I have offered one." The auditorium burst into applause, the attendees rising to their feet in a wave of admiration. Becca Sloane lowered her head, her Chanel skirt offering no comfort, and quietly apologized to Mrs. Moore Bellamy. Representatives from MIT, Stanford, and Caltech moved forward, their collaborative offers presented with unsteady hands. Lillian smiled, clasped Henry's hand, and remarked, "I just came to take you home for lunch." The audience responded with a powerful cheer, witnessing her poise dismantle the elite's presumptions. The consequences were swift, a judgment communicated without words. Becca Sloan was called before the advisory board, her research funding withdrawn, and her reputation served as a warning to those present. Clara Holt was moved to administrative roles, ending her career of controlling access. The Harvard professor who had ridiculed Lillian's cardigan was barred from participating in further discussions, effectively removing his impact. The Cornell researcher's grant proposals were denied, and his defamatory statements were revealed as falsehoods. Those who had previously shown scorn were addressed with consequences, and their positions lessened. Individuals who disseminated rumors concealed their credentials, their influence negated. Lillian stood next to Henry, her canvas shoes grounded, her notebook demonstrating her integrity. The audience's emotions resonated powerfully, their frustration changing to jubilation, Lillian's success shining brightly and diminishing the standing of the forum's leaders within St. Lennox's esteemed buildings. Henry Bellamy dominated the lecture theater, his voice cutting through the chandelier-lit air like a gavel. "You dared to question Lillian Moore Bellamy," he stated, his gray eyes radiating controlled fury, the architect of this forum's most significant insights. He raised a tablet displaying a list of consequences: Becca Sloan's research grants, Clara Holt's conference privileges, and academic advisory roles, all revoked by St. Lennox addressed the board. "Your names are erased from academic circles," he stated, his gaze fixed on Becca. "You've lost more than prestige, you've lost your futures." The crowd's gasps echoed as a wave of shock. With their empires collapsing under his direction, Lillian stood alongside him, her worn cardigan appearing bright, her victory assured by Henry's immense power. The elite's failure was a striking display, their overconfidence destroyed under Henry's direction. Becca Sloan retreated, her Chanel skirt seeming inappropriate, her standing a lesson to those present. Clara Holt's power crumbled, her disapproval a matter of public record, her attendance guiding her towards the atrium exit. The Columbia professor's funding disappeared, his defamation revealing his falsehoods. The professors who'd idly written with pens concealed their cufflinks, their positions as advisors terminated. The staff who'd previously expressed disdain were let go, their professional paths concluded. Those who had circulated rumors faced rejection, their power fading. Lillian remained composed, her canvas shoes a subtle sign of strength, her hazel eyes resolute. The audience's emotions surged, their anger shifting to admiration, Lillian's triumph and Henry's fury dominating the forum's esteemed chambers. A wave of applause filled the hall as his widespread condemnation diminished the arrogance of the world's leading figures. Lillian's history remained a mystery, unknown to the attendees, not Becca, and not the staff. At 20, she tackled differential equations while caring for her mother, her diner earnings paying for textbooks. At 25, she encountered Henry at a math symposium, her understated intelligence captivating him amidst a gathering of prominent figures. Their marriage, a secluded promise in a Vermont meadow, was founded on affection and mutual mathematical understanding. Becca's challenge, the staff's badges, the academic's attire, none compared to the significance of the notebook Lillian possessed. She now stood in the lecture theater, her rubber band a testament to her truth, her silence a furnace that burned through their lies. The forum resumed, but the attendees' eyes remained on Lillian. A Caltech dean approached, his voice low with respect. "Mrs. Moore Bellamy, your work is extraordinary," he said, referencing his earlier scorn or regret. The academics retreated, their influence null, their aides scrambling to salvage ties with St. Lennox. The sponsors lingered, their influence wavering in Lillian's presence. She proceeded toward the atrium, her hazel eyes following Henry's pleased smile. The chandeliers softened, the autumn light lessening, leaving a procession of the world's most powerful individuals hoping for her attention, their gestures a quiet acknowledgement of the woman they had previously belittled. She was presented with a complex mathematical problem, not because a solution was required, but because they desired to observe her hesitate, falter, and become speechless. The seminar room was full of people in tailored suits and PhD name tags. She arrived wearing faded canvas shoes and a wrinkled shirt. However, when she held the marker and hundreds of eyes anticipated a misstep, the whiteboard revealed something unexpected. True brilliance doesn't require fanfare. It simply needs to be expressed. And the room responded with admiration. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were Lillian? The moment she entered the will reading, she was dismissed. A gray linen dress, a faded cardigan, and simple flats were all it took to elicit scorn from a room filled with meticulously styled appearances, their smiles seeming insincere. A man wearing a gold tie initiated the remarks, a mixture of laughter and mockery in his tone. "Is that the maid?" A young woman subtly inclined her head and murmured to her companion, probably a distressed former paramour seeking compensation. Ivy Clark remained near the rear of the room. She remained silent, showing no reaction, merely adjusting the strap of the cloth bag she held. In their eyes, she was merely a shadow, an outsider who had entered a space intended for blood, legacy, and status. However, they were mistaken. The woman they had just humiliated was the legal wife of the man they were all gathered to inherit from. And today's reading of the will was a test she had assisted in creating. The Thorne estate stretched across a wooded hill, its stone walls and iron gates forming a fortress against the world. Inside the grand hall, the scent of old money mingled with polished oak, leather, and the subtle fragrance of roses from vases that cost more than most people's rent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, capturing the April light and distributing it across a gathering of 42. Relatives, investors, advisors, and assistants. Each one was dressed to assert their position in Logan Thorne's empire. Elegant suits, silk dresses, and diamonds that sparkled with each movement filled the room. Guests mingled, sipping champagne, their expressions of sympathy seemingly as practiced as their smiles. Ivy entered discreetly, her footsteps barely audible on the marble floor. She selected a spot in the back corner, close to a large window that showcased the hazy hills beyond. Her dress was understated, comfortably loose, the gray fabric worn soft with age. A pale blue cardigan, faded with time, slipped gently from one shoulder. Ivy's dark hair was styled in a low bun, with a few strands escaping to soften her features, high cheekbones, hazel eyes that seemed to observe everything, and lips that remained composed even when others might have retorted. At 36, Ivy possessed a quiet beauty that resonated, like a memorable melody. Preston Thorne, Logan's second cousin, rested against a mahogany table, his Rolex gleaming as he smirked. Indeed, how did the cleaning staff gain access? His voice resonated, intentional, prompting amusement from a group of cousins close by. Marissa, Preston's sister, wearing a crimson dress, flipped her hair and remarked, "Perhaps she's here to dust the will before it's read." More laughter followed, brittle and pointed, like shattering glass. Across the room, a younger woman, Clara, a niece with a tech startup and a TikTok following, subtly pushed her friend, Elise, a former assistant to Logan's CFO. "Bet she's one of his charity cases," Clara whispered, loud enough for Ivy to hear. "Or a mistress he forgot about," Clara continued, looking at her bag as if she were carrying her lunch. Elise chuckled quietly, taking a subtle photo with her phone. "This is going on my story," she said. Clara's fingers quickly moved across her phone, a smile spreading as she wrote a caption for the photo she'd just taken of Ivy. Logan's charity case interrupted the will reading. "Guess she thinks thrift store chic gets her $1 billion, she said, making sure Ivy heard. The people nearby chuckled, some reaching for their phones to approve and distribute the post, which was quickly becoming popular online. Numerous comments appeared, with strangers referring to Ivy as insignificant and needy, their words a digital attack that reflected the room's disapproval. Ivy remained still, her hazel eyes reflecting the light from Clara's screen. She remained silent. Her quietness appeared to encourage their enjoyment, as if her restraint was a test they needed to overcome. Elise, a friend of Clara's, moved closer, her voice laced with what sounded like sympathy. It was a sad situation. She didn't realize she had become a meme. The laughter increased, a wave of unkindness that reduced Ivy to something less than a person, her self-respect a focus for their mockery. Ivy's fingers briefly pressed into her cloth bag, a simple item carefully made, with no visible branding. She avoided looking at Clara or Elise, ignored Preston's taunt and Marissa's barb. She remained still, her breathing regular, her gaze fixed on the vacant chair at the front where the lawyer would sit. To them, her silence appeared as weakness, a sign of exclusion. They failed to perceive the strength beneath, the way her stillness commanded a room without effort. The crowd swelled as more people arrived. A previous investor, Gerald Hayes, wearing a pinstripe suit, commented to his wife, "Logan always had people around. This one doesn't belong here." His wife, adorned with emeralds, concurred, her gaze assessing Ivy's attire. "She lacks refinement," she stated, her voice barely audible. "Her mere presence is mortifying to the family." A relative, Trevor in a velvet blazer, called out, "Hey, dear, the kitchen is over there." He indicated a side entrance, smiling as his companions applauded him. A woman, Lillian, adorned with pearls and a descendant of ants, expressed her disapproval with a cluck of her tongue. She suggested someone should guide her out prior to the lawyer's arrival. She felt it was disrespectful to Logan's memory. Marissa, in a crimson dress that moved with each step, approached Ivy. Her heels made clicking sounds like a timer winding down. She halted close to Ivy, appearing taller, and her perfume was strong. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she stated, her voice clear and audible to everyone present. She extended her arm, brushing Ivy's cardigan as if it were discarded, her nails lightly touching the material with clear disapproval. "This isn't a soup kitchen. You should leave before you cause further embarrassment." The onlookers observed, a few smiling, others murmuring, but no one intervened. Ivy's hands remained firm on her bag, yet the intrusion into her personal space felt like an offense, Marissa's proximity a deliberate warning. A relative close by whispered, "She's got some nerve staying," and the room's agreement regarding Marissa's actions was evident, their quietness sharing in Ivy's distress. Ivy remained still. Her gaze shifted quickly to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking consistently. She was aware it was active, transmitting to a secure server only two individuals could view. One was her, the other wasn't present. Not yet. As Grayson began to read, Trevor quietly moved behind Ivy, the fabric of his velvet blazer softly contacting the wall as he murmured to his companions, "Observe this." He retrieved a cocktail napkin from a table close by, wrote charity case with a Sharpie, and discreetly placed it in Ivy's bag while she was unaware. The room observed, quiet amusement rippling through the space as individuals indicated the note, its prominent letters marking Ivy. Clara took another photograph, struggling to contain her laughter, while Elise murmured, "She's a walking joke now." Ivy remained oblivious, her attention on Grayson, but the crowd's excitement was palpable, their amusement a painful blow to her sense of self. Trevor relaxed against his chair, smiling, as Lillian commented, "She deserves it for appearing like that." The prank was not only unkind, but also a performance, intended to make Ivy appear foolish for simply being present among them. The lawyer, Arthur Grayson, arrived promptly at 10 a.m. Dressed in a gray suit, his briefcase felt substantial with its contents. He appeared to be in his 60s, his face marked by years of managing wealth and conflicts. A stillness fell over the room as he placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and retrieved a single, sealed envelope. There was no unnecessary display or introduction. He straightened his glasses and surveyed the attendees, his eyes briefly lingering on Ivy, a moment that disturbed Preston, who furrowed his brow and murmured to Marissa, "What was that?" Gerald Hayes stood, the fabric of his pinstripe suit straining as he gestured toward Ivy, his voice resonant like a judge announcing a ruling. "This woman is a fraud," he stated, his finger shaking with anger. "Logan would never permit someone like her close to his estate. She's here to deceive us. That's undeniable." The room filled with murmurs of concurrence, heads moving in agreement, gazes fixed on Ivy as if she were a criminal apprehended in the act. His wife, her emeralds sparkling, added, "She likely possesses a false identification within that worn handbag." The accusation lingered, casting Ivy as a criminal in their perception, her presence unwelcome and offensive. Ivy's gaze remained unwavering, yet the burden of their judgment felt immense, each word a painful blow meant to expose her. The crowd's whispers intensified, their anger a display for one another, Ivy's silence only intensifying their desire to condemn her. Grayson began, "We are gathered to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Thorne, which was executed 3 years ago and confirmed as genuine." A wave of whispers filled the room. 3 years. Logan had disappeared only 6 months prior, his private jet having been lost over the Pacific. There was no debris, no remains, just an absence that generated news and avarice. Many believed he was deceased, many hoped so. Preston adjusted his tie, his smirk reappearing. "Let's proceed, then. Who receives the inheritance?" Clara moved closer, her perfectly shaped nails clicking against her phone, already composing her celebratory message. Gerald folded his arms, voicing concerns about stock options. Lillian held her pearls, confiding in Trevor about the summer house in Nice. Ivy remained motionless, her bag now on the floor. She observed Grayson's hands as he opened the seal, the breaking of the wax echoing in the hushed room. They moved closer, their breaths light, their gazes intense. This was the moment. The instant they had prepared for, plotted for, traveled across continents for. Logan's empire, encompassing tech patents, real estate, and a biotech firm valued at $90 billion, was potentially available, or so it appeared. Grayson opened the document, his voice calm yet measured, every word like a stone placed in quiet water. "I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind, issue this as my final will. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I bequeath only this statement. Wealth exposes character, it does not define worth." The room fell silent. Preston's smile wavered. Clara's phone moved slightly in her grasp. Gerald's jaw clenched, his wife's emerald seeming surprisingly weighty. "Surely this couldn't be accurate," Grayson stated, appearing calm. "All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual rights, are bequeathed to one person. The individual who stood by me for no reason other than love. The person who never inquired about my net worth, never sought my name for status. My wife, Ivy." A sharp, jagged gasp filled the room as heads turned, searching for the person behind the announcement. Preston let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Wife." Logan wasn't married. Marissa's hand covered her mouth, her red fingernails contrasting with her whitening skin. Clara's eyes narrowed, looking towards Elise, who silently questioned, "What the hell?" Gerald pushed back his chair, the sound scratching against the floor. "This is absurd. Logan never spoke of a wife. It must be a deception. Someone has fabricated this." Lillian gripped Trevor's arm, her voice high-pitched. "She's not here, right?" she asked, referring to a possible gold digger they hadn't met, someone attempting to take what belonged to them. Grayson raised a hand, calming them. "The will is valid, it was signed and notarized. We have supporting documents, including a marriage certificate, photographs, and personal letters, all available for verification." He retrieved a folder from his briefcase and opened it, displaying a photograph. It was Logan. He appeared younger, laughing, with his arm around Ivy, who was wearing a simple white dress. 7 years prior, a courthouse stood silent. Suddenly, the atmosphere shattered. Preston struck the table forcefully, declaring, "This is insanity." "Who is she?" Clara rose, her phone unnoticed, demanding, "Where's this Ivy? Show her." Trevor responded with a scornful expression, suggesting, "Probably some con artist hiding in Belize." Marissa's voice, sharp with anger, pierced the noise, asking, "If she's real, why is she not here? Too ashamed to show her face?" Ivy advanced. The action was subtle, measured, resembling the shifting of a tide. She moved across the room, her footsteps silent, yet every gaze followed her. Her cardigan shifted gently, and her linen dress shimmered in the light. She paused near Grayson, maintaining a poised stance and a tranquil expression. A simple cloth bag rested on her shoulder, reflecting her understated nature. The quiet was profound. Grayson began to speak, then stopped, his gold tie appearing overly bright. Clara's cheeks reddened, a previous image seeming to glow from her phone. Gerald retreated into his chair, his wife's emeralds appearing less vibrant now. Lillian's pearls appeared to constrict her. Her hand paused in the middle of a movement. Grayson gestured toward Ivy, a subtle acknowledgement in his gaze. Mrs. Thorne, he stated, delivering the folder to her. She accepted it without a visible reaction, her fingers firm as she opened it, observing the photograph, her lips curving slightly, as if recalling the occasion it captured. Then she shut the folder and turned to address the assembled group. "I did not come for the funds," she declared, her voice distinct and calm, reminiscent of a chime through mist. "I came to understand your character. Who amongst you treated Logan like a person, rather than a financial asset? Who would grieve him, not his wealth?" She stopped, her hazel eyes moving across the assembly, observing each individual with ease. "You have revealed yourselves for who you are." Preston spoke, his voice trembling but resolute. "Are you suggesting you are his spouse? You?" He indicated her dress, her cardigan, his laughter strained. "Logan Thorne married to this? No intention to be rude, madam, but your attire suggests you purchase clothing from second-hand shops." Ivy did not flinch. "I do," she stated plainly. "Logan didn't mind. He appreciated me for who I am, disregarding my clothes or possessions. Can any of you claim the same?" Clara scoffed, crossing her arms. "That's a convincing performance, but I'm skeptical. If you are his wife, what evidence do you have? A photograph isn't sufficient. Anyone can create a false image." Sounds of concurrence spread through the room, encouraging those present. Gerald affirmed, his voice prominent again. "She's correct. We require further validation. Witnesses, official papers, something tangible." Grayson reopened his briefcase, retrieving a bundle of documents. A marriage license, dated 7 years ago, was signed by both parties and 2 witnesses, a nurse named Sarah Ellis and a librarian, Michael Reed. There were personal letters from Logan to Ivy, handwritten, and verified through forensic analysis. Bank records demonstrated joint accounts maintained privately at Logan's request. He paused, retrieving a small USB drive. The drive contained video footage from their wedding. He inserted the drive into a laptop on the table, and a screen on the wall flickered to life. A hush fell over the room as a blurred video appeared on the screen. Courthouse steps, Logan in a plain suit, Ivy in a white dress, both of them smiling as they shared a kiss. Sarah and Michael stood close, applauding. The timestamp aligned with the marriage certificate. The resistance in the room dissipated, faces losing color, eyes shifting to Ivy, who observed the footage with a subdued pain in her expression. Marissa rose to her feet, her voice shaking with anger. "This is a fabrication. You orchestrated this, correct? Intending to, what, make us appear unfavorable. You're insignificant. Logan would never choose someone like you." Her words caused pain, yet Ivy's expression remained unchanged. She allowed Marissa's anger to linger without a reply. Then she spoke, her voice now icier, with a precision that could wound. "You are correct about one aspect. This was orchestrated, not to deceive you, but to evaluate you. To determine if any of you were concerned enough to inquire about my identity before you ridiculed me. To see if you would respect Logan's legacy, or simply grasp for his fortune." She advanced towards the assembled group, her aura dominating the space. "You have failed. Every single one of you." Trevor chuckled, now visibly anxious. "Test? Is this some kind of game show? Surely you can't be serious." But his voice faltered as Ivy's gaze locked onto his, unwavering and resolute. She retrieved a small remote from her bag. "Logan is not dead," she stated, choosing her words with precision. "He is alive, and he has been observing you throughout this entire period." She activated the remote, and a monitor on the wall sprang to life. Within a room, shadowed and quiet, Logan Thorne was seated. Aged 42, possessing a lean build and dark hair touched with gray, his blue eyes remained keen. He reclined in a chair, his demeanor composed yet firm, reminiscent of a judge assessing individuals. A camera feed displayed a live connection with a timestamp visible. It read April 15, 2025, 10:32 a.m. Suddenly, the room erupted with gasps, shouts, and expressions of disbelief. Preston recoiled, his tie disarranged. Clara's phone slipped from her hand, the screen fracturing against the marble. Gerald's wife held his arm tightly, murmuring, "No, it's not possible." Lillian's pearls broke, pearls rolling across the floor. Logan's voice emerged from the monitor, deep and strong. "You believed I was gone. You thought this was your opportunity to divide up my life as if it were a cake. But I've been present, observing, hearing every word, each scornful expression, every deception." His eyes moved, seeming to look past the camera towards Ivy. "She cautioned me you would reveal your true nature." She was correct. Ivy's lips flickered, almost a smile, as she addressed the assembled group, her voice calm. Logan's aircraft incident was staged, a maneuver to assess allegiance and identify betrayals. You arrived promptly, adorned in your finest attire, eager to assert claims you did not possess. However, this was not about finances, it concerned uncovering the truth. The doors of the grand hall swung open, and Logan entered. He was genuine, substantial, his presence impactful. His suit was understated, without a tie, his shoes showing signs of his journey. A path opened as he moved through the room, the murmurs fading, the confidence disappearing. He paused near Ivy, his hand lightly touching hers, providing a sense of stability. She raised her gaze to him, her expression relaxing for the first time, and he inclined his head, a wordless understanding. He turned to address the room, his tone compassionate and natural. Ivy orchestrated this, the will, the reading, the cameras, everything. She wanted to understand your character when you believed you were unobserved, who would treat an unknown with respect, whose actions would be kind, whose concern would extend to me, irrespective of my financial status. He hesitated, his gaze traveling across the assembly, fixing upon each individual. None of you earned his favor. Logan's eyes settled on Preston, the man who had initially derided Ivy, his gold tie now appearing ostentatious and restrictive. You insulted my wife, Logan stated, his voice subdued yet intensely threatening, each word penetrating the room's astonished quiet. You chuckled as she remained standing, isolated, allowing you to reveal your character. Did you believe I wouldn't notice? Preston recoiled, his earlier confidence vanished, his fingers awkwardly adjusting his tie as if it offered protection. The onlookers observed, motionless, as Logan approached, his stature imposing even in his plain suit. You are not family, Preston, you are a parasite, and I will no longer sustain you. A guard materialized beside Preston, his hold steady, and as Preston departed, his objections were lost in the reverberation of Logan's statements. The room felt lighter, justice a tangible force, Ivy's honor restored with each step of Preston's disgrace. Preston attempted to speak, his voice hoarse. Logan, please, we didn't know. She didn't say anything. Logan's gaze snapped to him, cold and final. She shouldn't have had to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your first reaction was to tear her down. That's not family, that's not loyalty. Clara stepped forward, desperate now. We're sorry, okay? We didn't mean it. Ask her, Logan, ask her to forgive us. Her eyes moved to Ivy, as if begging, but Ivy's expression was unyielding. Her silence felt more condemning than any words. Logan refused to agree. It's not a matter of forgiveness. It's about accountability. He gestured towards Grayson, who produced another document. This is a supplemental clause to the will, taking effect now. Anyone who addressed Ivy disrespectfully today, identified in security camera recordings, audio recordings, or through testimony, will be disinherited. No shares, no properties, no communication, the matter is concluded. Preston began reading names, his voice sharp and authoritative.
Preston Thorne, Marissa Thorne, Clara Evans, Gerald Heiress, Lilian Ward, Trevor Lang.
Each name was announced with force, causing faces to fall, protests to erupt, then subside as security personnel intervened. Preston shouted, "You can't do this. I'm blood." But a guard gently took his arm, guiding him toward the exits. Marissa followed, her crimson dress flowing, her sobs audible. Clara held her damaged phone, quietly murmuring, "This can't be happening." As she was being escorted out, Clara's face lost its color as Logan turned to her, his gaze piercing her like glass. "You turned my wife into a meme," he stated, his voice even but intense. believing your followers would applaud you. But falsehoods don't endure, he continued. He gestured toward Grayson, who activated his laptop, and Clara's phone vibrated intensely in her hand. Her social media accounts, her empire of influence, were collapsing publicly, posts deleted, followers decreasing by thousands, sponsors severing ties with remarkable efficiency. "You're banned from my companies, my properties, my life," Logan stated as a guard took her arm, her damaged phone falling to the floor. The crowd's gasps were a chorus of awe, the room charged with the excitement of justice. Ivy stood beside Logan, her silence holding weight as Clara's digital influence weakened, her past mistreatment of Ivy now contributing to her downfall. Gerald's wife attempted to protest, her jewels sparkling, but Logan interrupted her. "You insulted my wife, and you are no longer welcome here." They departed, their heads lowered, as onlookers dispersed and guards emptied the room. Lillian's scattered pearls made a brittle sound beneath the footsteps, a suitable conclusion to her arrogance. As the doors shut, just a few remained, 3 individuals who had remained quiet, who hadn't laughed or sneered. Sarah Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes filled with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian, who had nodded to Ivy upon her entry, acknowledging her discreetly. And Anna, a groundskeeper who had offered Ivy water prior to the reading, without hesitation. Logan turned to them, his voice gentler now. "You observed her, you didn't judge, that's what family signifies." He looked at Ivy, his hand finding hers again. "You were right about all of it." Ivy's gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. "I didn't want to be right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I wanted them to be better." She faced the 3 who remained, her eyes warm now. "Thank you for seeing me." Logan squeezed her hand, his voice low for her alone. "You are more than they'll ever understand." A slight, genuine smile touched her lips as she moved closer, the fabric of her cardigan lightly against his sleeve. The room was still, the vultures having departed, the truth revealed. Ivy did not require the money, the estate, or the empire. She had never desired them. What she had wanted was Logan, living, complete, belonging to her. And now, with the world reduced to its essence, they remained together, resolute. The hills beyond shone green beneath the April sky, and the cameras ceased blinking, their purpose fulfilled. If this story resonated with you, please show your appreciation with a like, share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it, and subscribe for more stories that explore difficult subjects with hope. Your support helps ensure these stories continue to be told.